The Sci-Fi Film Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Sci-Fi Film Podcast. I'm Andy Walker and I'm joined as always by my son Scott. Hello, Scott.
Hello.
Oh, weird. How are you?
Just don't say I'm weird.
You
I know
are.
I'm weird. I don't have to be told, and people don't have to be told.
Fair enough.
I have a certificate to tell you that.
Yes. I'm not mad. My mother had me tested. Yes.
Not,
So
not
how are
even
you?
worth the napkin is wrote on. Yeah, I'm okay. Been busy day and stuff going on. How are you?
Yeah, kind of pretty much the same as normal. Kind of melting you from the inside out, and
The same as normal could be anything.
yeah. What's the quote from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? I feel like a military academy. Bits of me keep passing out. Yes.
Oh,
Anyway, so this week we are reviewing science fiction films
yeah, it's changed.
for a change. Yeah, we don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we do them. We do a lot of them over the year, but it sometimes feels like all we seem to do is horror.
I think the problem is the problem we've had is that a lot of people, especially this time of year, like sort of the October sort of time, people start making a lot of horror films to come out for
Yeah,
Halloween and
but
stuff
I
like that.
mean, I think we do a fair mix of horror and sci-fi, but it does sometimes feel like
Yeah,
we concentrate more on horror than anything else.
I
But
think it's just because of the fact there is a lot more of them as well.
there are, it's true, especially
It seems to be almost like this an abundance of horror films compared to sci-fi films, especially your
short
ones.
films. Yeah,
Yeah,
short films. There's a lot more. Okay, anyway, right. So the first of our short films this week is called Zib.
yeah,
And this is from 2023, Black Spot Productions, and it's a film made by Jonathan Gauthier, I think it's pronounced. The synopsis for this film says, Antonin Zib, granted eternal life by three mysterious figures, must in return carry out deadly tasks to ensure their clandestine control over humanity.
yeah.
Yeah. I thought this was a really good idea. And it's a very well made sort of thing. Well acted. The effects are good. The effects I thought were really good. I think the story works really well. I like the fact that they've got like this older kind of grubby sort of guy as the hero of it. And
Yeah,
he goes from being I don't know, sword wielding sort of
well,
berserker to being a
he's
sort of
about he says he's
biker.
about 700 years old, so it makes it probably to be like as I wouldn't say Aztec, but sort of that sort of medieval sort of time, sword
Yeah,
wielding elder gentleman to then being this grotty biker. And as
yeah.
Amy pointed out, it's pretty much the way I'm looking in life is to go grey and get miserable. But no, I see. I liked this. I agree with you. I did agree. I like the idea behind it. My only problem, and this is me nitpicking, is that they said that whoever wears the amulet is immortal.
Yeah.
How did he kill the first guy that was wearing it?
Yeah, well, yeah.
But other than that, that's my only gripe with it. I think it's a very good film. It's very well made. Like you said, the special effects to it were very well done. Cinematography to it was amazing. The sort of angles they had on it, and the sort of the the way it was sort of left, like sort of a lot more questions, or not a lot more questions, but questions of like what was going to happen and where were things going and
Yeah.
what else had these people been involved in and
Yeah.
what other stuff had because he seemed very sort of annoyed that they turned up again, and it's
What
sort of
is interesting is the fact that for I don't know what they were, whether they were aliens or whether they were just hyper intelligent humans or what they were, but they did seem a little bit dense.
yes,
They weren't the cleverest of people. Um, but no, it was good. I thought it worked really well within its own sort of
yeah, it was very
universe.
well done, and I think it was very well made. It
Yeah.
wasn't it didn't look it's going to sound horrible, but it didn't look cheaply made. It looked professional. It looked sort of very well acted. I think the guy who plays Zib is quite a very good actor.
Yeah. No, I agree. I thought it was really good. It worked really well and I really liked it. Okay. The second short film is from also it's 2022, 20 sorry, 2023, 24. Um, and it is called Light. This is from Apollo Productions, and it was made in conjunction with De Montfort University. The writer and director was Ted Clark. The synopsis for this says a sci-fi horror film following the mind-bending experience of a security guard working the night shift at an empty office building, who stumbles upon a supernatural phenomenon that will lead him on a journey of strange discoveries with horrifying consequences.
Yeah, God,
It's not a bad film, but I do think the synopsis is a little overblown for what it actually is.
yeah,
Um,
it makes it. I don't know. It sounds horrible. It makes it sound a lot more future. I don't want to say futuristic, but sort of fantastic and out of this world than what it actually is.
yeah, I mean, it's not a bad film, as I say. The cinematography and the editing were pretty good. The effects are pretty good. The acting's okay. Some of the dialogue, the sound was far too muffled for me.
Yeah.
You couldn't hear it properly. The music's good. It's an interesting idea as far as it goes, but it just needs more because it's like I was expecting so much more from this.
Yeah,
And it's just basically an orb of light that makes him disappear. It's not,
it's the Uber light, and then obviously the colleague that works the day shift then seems to know a bit more about what's going on, but that's
yeah,
not really explained. And yeah, I agree. It was. I don't be wrong. I think as someone that's worked a couple of night shifts, I know the fact that it can be boring as hell,
yeah,
especially when there's nothing going on. You just got to sit there and go and twiddle your thumbs. So that bit I think was very well done. The fact that he was trying to entertain himself, but yeah, I agree with you. The acting was a little bit in places wooden. Um, Dialogue, yeah, it seemed very all over the place. Sometimes it was very clear, sometimes it was muffled, sometimes it was it was quite quiet, and but I said the effect of the light I think was well done.
yeah,
Like that then the lighting effects they'd done on it I thought were very well done. But yeah, it just I got to the end of it and I was like, okay, what sort of underwhelmed. It
yeah,
sort of sat there. I was like, I thought there would be more to it,
yeah. No, I
especially
agree.
for one that's it's like 10 minutes long, and they could have done a lot with it.
Yeah. I'd say it's like I wouldn't say that the experience he had is a mind-bending experience.
Mind numbing, maybe,
Um,
especially the look on his face. But
there's nothing necessarily to indicate that it's a supernatural phenomenon.
no,
Doesn't
it's
you don't?
if they'd made it look like a ghostly orb, or I don't know, there was some sort of maybe sounds stupid. Maybe if it led him to like I don't know um, a cemetery, then I can understand. But it just he just appears, and other than the symbols that his colleague he draws, there's no
Yeah.
real any sort of connection to what it is.
And the thing about the journey of strange discoveries with horrifying consequences, I mean, he seems to go through a thing where he goes a bit loopy at the end, where he's making all sorts of laughing faces and all this sort of thing, and then just disappears. So you
Yeah.
don't know what's happened to him or why it's happened or what's going on.
No, and saying it left a lot more questions about what was going on, but it was also the fact that sort of I was saying I got to the end and I thought, oh, okay,
Yeah.
it's a shame because I think as a premise and the idea, it's got a lot to it.
Yeah.
I think the execution of it was just a little bit underwhelming.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. Okay. On to our feature film. Now, at least once throughout this each season, I try to throw in the curveball of an old black and white film, whether it be science fiction or horror. And this year's one is a doozy. Um, this is a 1935 film from MGM Films, and it is called Transatlantic Tunnel.
Yeah,
Um, Yeah. Now I can't write down who the director was. I don't know the director. I don't think it really matters. Uh, the cast of this was interesting because it's Madge Evans, Richard Dix. Now, Richard Dix did a lot of westerns and dramas, especially in silent films. So it's to me was a bit of a step outside of his normal stuff. Helen Vincent and Leslie Banks. And Leslie Banks did a lot of other dramas rather than sci-fi things, that sort of thing.
yeah.
Um, so I don't know, it's slightly odd but interesting cast. The synopsis for this is just a basic synopsis. This is a man is obsessed with the building of a tunnel between the UK and the USA. So
A lot more polite than the synopsis I read, which was a man obsessed with with a tunnel.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's
Um,
not just one that he's been obsessed with, but all right.
so this was made at a time when there were tensions building in Europe and around the world about fears about another world war.
Yeah,
Um, but interestingly, the enemy in this film isn't Germany. It's kind of like you've got the English speaking nations of the world and
the rest of the world.
the well, yeah, but the rest of the world is kind of more aimed at being kind of Asia and Russia,
Yeah,
which I thought was a bit interesting. Um, so yeah, it's set in the early part of the 21st century, apparently. The guy who is building the tunnel, so it's what I thought was funny, is 1935, this was made, and they reckoned in this that this guy had built the Channel Tunnel in 1940.
yeah.
Um, and yes, I don't know. Uh, I'm not quite sure why they thought that building a tunnel between London or between England and America was going to bring about world peace. I didn't quite get why that would be true.
Don't. To be honest, there's a lot to this film I don't quite understand. Um,
Yeah.
like the fact that his son grows up, but he doesn't seem to age.
Yeah, there is that.
But there's a lot of for me. There's a lot of things in this that I thought were quite interesting. Is that they're taking their look of what things were to come, what they would have been like in the 20th century, what like where we would have gone with technology, which wasn't far off when you think about it. With a lot of the fact that you can make video calls now, like from screen to screen, you can like how quickly you could just hop on a plane and go to the States, and
Yeah.
come back, and um, like the fact that how quickly sort of media could be pushed out all over the world. And this, I suppose as well, the look of it, some of the ideals of what they've done with the cars, the way that they're streamlined, the way that they made a lot more sort of they weren't so big and bulky. And I think looking at that, they got some of it right, but it's still it
I
amazed me with a lot of it the fact that they're in this tunnel talking about nitrous gas and they're all smoking pipes.
Yeah, that was something that got me was the fact that there's all this technology that seems to have been done really well and has been sort of like, these future things and that sort of thing. And then walking around smoking pipes and talking in very clipped tones, like it's air. It's yeah,
And
and
it's just, I suppose even with like with the wheelchair that he uses, with one of the guys using it, I sort of like I looked at it, I was like, okay, I can sort of see it, but it looked a bit it looked very weird. But
yeah. And
so even as opposed to the state of the aeroplane model,
yes. Now, you see, I mean, some of the practical effects and the technology things I thought were really well done. When they were tunneling in and that sort of thing, and the effects there, I thought was really well done. Although they are those and the video screens and all that kind of thing are vaguely reminiscent of watching one of the old Flash Gordon uh, series in many ways. Um, But I mean, I'm not sure about the science behind this film either, to be honest.
well, the bit that makes me laugh is the fact, and this is where my sort of scientific brain popped in. They're using a radium drill. Radium is very highly radioactive.
Yeah, no, no.
In a small confined space where there's a lot of people, and the only bit they said was they were getting ill because of the gas, which was
But
supposedly being released underground from somewhere.
and the other thing that got me was like, they have a problem with the gas, and they have a problem with underground volcano. There's no mention, well, although they mention the underground volcanoes, there's no mention about the problems of plate tectonics.
And
And the fact that the two continents are on two separate plates of the Earth's crust. So putting a tunnel between them,
yeah, you couldn't do. But it's just there's, and that's the whole thing. I suppose they
and,
do talk about it because of the fact that they do this whole bit of we've reached the volcano, which you would only find at a gap on the tectonic plates. But yeah, it's just there's some of the science behind it. I sat there and I looked at it and I was like, okay, it was
and
hard to believe. But again, it just shows the fact that even in the times, I suppose I know it's all dramatized, but the fact that these things were meant to be built for peace, someone's going to make it, someone's going to
it's
twist it and make it for war.
the other thing about it, without being funny, is that there was very little comment made about what they were going to do about the whole water pressure. I mean, the actual pressure, the air pressure when you get down to that level is so dense
Yeah,
that
you
being
wouldn't
able
be
to
able to go down there.
going down there and breathing while you were making the tunnel would be quite difficult, I would imagine.
Well,
Um,
drilling down there without any specialist equipment would have been quite impossible. But yeah,
yeah, I mean, they did do an interesting thing though, which is that they kind of predated the whole Marvel thing, which is the fact that this guy who's doing the drilling is apparently invented this metal, which is almost indestructible,
yeah.
which is what he's using for. And there is a part of me that says if you've got metal that's indestructible, why bother building a tunnel? Why not just build a dome over the places you don't want bombed? Um,
Well, that as well, and the fact that if it's that indestructible, I know it's a bit, I know it's even more impossible. But why build a tunnel and not a bridge?
True.
Bridge
Yeah.
would just seem to be easier to build. But yeah, no, it's just there's a lot to this that I thought, okay, yeah, it's good. I like the fact that some of the use of technology, some of the fact that what they were saying with the whole video calls and stuff like that. But there was also some of it I looked at and went, yeah, you're pushing that a bit.
And the thing
But
about, I mean, the thing about this is this is because of the way that the films were then. Although this is a science fiction film, and although it has a lot of science and scientific stuff in it, it is effectively a kind of love story with a kind of family based around a family that are dysfunctional.
yeah, and
Um,
I get that. As I say, it sounds, some of the story behind that, I suppose, is good. I suppose, even now, it's still good because of the fact that you're saying that if you put yourself into your work and don't make time for people that care, you are going to lose them. And I get and I do like that in their film, but I don't know. Some of it was very. It was a typical when it comes to stuff like that, it was typical sort of 30 sort of film where
yeah,
it was
yeah.
overdone and the
Yeah, I mean,
whole
I,
swooning after someone else because of the fact that just because of the fact they were there. It's just like,
I, I can't. I mean, one thing I will say about it is the fact that it doesn't feel like you've sat down for an hour and a half watching a film.
no, I've got to admit, it did seem to sort of go past very quickly watching it. And I
Yeah,
don't know if that's because of the fact that I was willing it to or what, but I've got to admit, like I sat there and it was about halfway through, and I sort of went, paused it for a minute because I had to go low, and I thought, oh, do you know, and then we went, oh, right, what? How long's I said, oh, I'm just gonna go low. She went like, oh, how long have you done on it? And I looked at her like, yeah, I've done almost half of this. I genuinely thought, oh, I've only got like a quarter of the way into it. So
yeah,
it did seem to sort of pass very quickly.
yeah. I think the pace of the film works quite well.
Yeah.
It's not a bad film for a 1930s sci-fi film that is kind of, basically a melodrama with sci-fi tacked onto it. It's not a bad film, and there's some interesting elements to it. Um, it's not one of the 1930s classics of sort of science fiction. It's not Metropolis or any of those type of, you know,
No. I
things.
suppose
But it's
I suppose we've done this with a few other films. We've made sort of our own sort of genre with it. This I would say is definitely one of the ones that like on a Sunday afternoon you sit there and it's on in the background, or you put it on just as a
yeah,
sort of chill out and watch sort of film, or it's just there.
yeah.
It's a
It,
nice thing to watch
the other
on
thing is
like rainy sunny afternoon on the rainy Sunday afternoon.
this is another one of those films that I think is good if you was if you had a party on Saturday night and
Yeah,
on a Sunday there are 4 or 5 of you sitting around recovering from the party, maybe having a couple of lazy beers in the afternoon, you could sit and watch this film and have a bit of a laugh with it.
yeah. It's one of them films you can either sit around with your family or just chill out and mong to and sort of have a bit of a conversation about. But it's not one that you have to overthink about, or it's a serious you need to pay attention to
No,
sort of film. It's
but
one that
I
it's sort of.
I quite like it. I don't know why.
I, I do know. I've got to admit, I do. I agree with you. It's got one of the things about it. It sort of go, yeah, I could watch it again.
Yeah,
It's not really sort. But when someone says to you why, you can't go. Well, because of. It's just like
no,
it's one of them films.
it's
Said
not.
when some of the science I thought was a bit, yeah, but there was a lot to it. I genuinely thought that it was quite amazed how far how close they got to it. So
Yeah,
I
I mean,
do like it.
I. It's not the greatest film in the world.
No,
It's not a bad film to watch though, it's a decent enough thing to watch for an hour and a half without sort of like having to worry too much about anything.
yeah,
Okay, so there you go. That's our films: Zib, which we both liked, Light, which we both thought was a bit
yeah,
on, and Transatlantic Tunnel, which you constantly surprise me because I put these things in sometimes thinking, oh, he's never going to like that. he's never going to like that. It's too old-fashioned a film for him. I
Do
mean,
you know,
he constantly surprised me by saying, "No, I really like that."
the problem is that this is the thing is that I sat there and I was having this conversation with a few of my friends about this, and the fact that they've listened to some of this and they go, "Oh, like some of your reactions have surprised me," and I'm like, because of the fact that I grew up watching the films with you, so I watched
Yeah,
like Invasion of the Body Snatchers or It Came from Outer Space or Creatures from the Deep Lagoon and stuff like that. So I grew up watching older films,
yeah,
and I think there are certain times where I do look at it and go, "Oh, it's a 1930s film," or "It's a film," and then sort of like this one sort of shocked me because of some of the stuff that's in it and involvement of it. But it's mainly when you do something like I think the sci-fi films shock me a lot more, and I do like them a lot more than a lot of the older horror films because you then go there's sort of the cringe moments where they go, "Oh my god!" and scream when it's just like, really, you have to put
yeah,
your foot in a bucket wall. But it's just sort of like stuff like that, and so the horror films I sort of cringe more at. But the sci-fi films I like watching because I like sitting there and go, how close have they got it?
yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
no, I do shock myself sometimes
I,
when
I
I
must
sort
admit,
of I sort of prepare myself. Oh, I've got to watch this film, and then once I've watched it, I'm like, I hate to admit it, but it weren't as bad as I
well,
thought.
the thing is that every time I do this, I get a reaction like this from you. I start thinking, "I must be one film I can find that is really going to
to be
make you
honest,
go, what is this garbage?"
to be honest, as I pointed out, as long as it's not about time travel, I'm quite happy to willing to watch it.
Uh,
But
I watched a great film the other day that you would have hated.
okay,
Well, no, it's I don't know, I'm not sure. It's it's called The Time Changer,
okay.
and how can I explain this film? Uh, it's about a guy who gets sent forward in time to
Hmm,
see how the world is going to turn out. Okay,
yeah.
he's in 1890
Okay.
and he gets sent forward to 2020, I think it's
Okay.
okay. And he just he's there for 4 or 5 days, and it's to experience the world as it is because he is part of a Bible seminary,
Yeah.
and he is about to bring out a book which someone of the others says he shouldn't do because in it he basically extols the point of it's just as good to say to somebody you shouldn't steal as it is to say to them Jesus said you shouldn't steal, so you shouldn't steal because Jesus said you shouldn't, and that's the word of the Lord.
Yeah.
And this guy says to him, you can't take those two things apart. You shouldn't say just you shouldn't steal. You've got to tell them that the reason they shouldn't steal is because that is the word of the Lord. And so he goes forward and finds this sort of like horrible society we live in nowadays, which has rejected the word of God and blah 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 blah. And he goes back and he says, "Yes, I agree with you. I will change my book." And the last thing is he says, "You sent things forward. Have you seen how far ahead in time you can send things?" And this guy said, "No." He said, "I thought, going that far ahead would be enough of a change for us. Any more than that might be too much." So he ends the film with him trying to send this Bible forward in time, and he starts off in 2090, and the machine won't send it. So then he changes it to 2080, and the machine won't send it, and then to 2070, and the machine won't send it. And the last thing you see is him turning the dial back again, and it's kind of like it's as if to say the end of days is coming. And I've never seen a religious science fiction film before in my entire life.
Oh
Not
dear.
not that type of thing. It's quite incredible.
I, 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 I went on a rant the other day actually because there's a new film that's been added to Netflix, which
Mhm.
is called Time Cut.
Oh, is that the one about the teenager?
Yeah,
That
the teenager that gets sent back in time to stop the day before the death of her sister and tries to stop the crime.
yep,
And
yep,
as
yep,
soon as I read the synopsis, I went, well, "There's a paradox,"
yep, yep, yep. I know, I know.
and went on this 10-minute rant. And Amy just looked at me, thinking, "No one's listening."
Well,
But
that's why I kind of like things that aren't. It's like what's it called? Happy Death Day,
yes,
which is kind of like Groundhog Day horror film.
yeah, where no matter how many times you go back, you still die.
But yeah, but in the end, she doesn't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
but
it's like,
it's kind of like the thing is, I like that because of the fact that it isn't a time machine. It isn't a thing. She just kind of like wakes up in this and wakes up, dies, and wakes back up again.
yeah. See,
And there's
stuff
no
like
effort
that I
notes on
like because it's not the whole we're going to send you back in time. It's all
it.
of a supernatural sort of thing. But
Yeah,
when they go, we're going to send you back in time, I'm like, you can't.
yeah, yeah.
It's bad, but I believe more in supernatural than I do in time travel.
See, the thing is, I the difference between you and me is I know it can't happen, but I enjoy watching the film because I enjoy the storytelling.
I, just, I
You,
enjoy it. There are certain ones I enjoy watching. Like
you just get
stupidly,
caught up in the whole "it can't possibly happen" thing.
I love watching the Time Machine and reading the book The Time Machine. I love that.
The thing about it is, it's what is known. The first time I heard this was a discussion about science fiction, and it's what's known as a suspension of disbelief. You have to suspend your disbelief in something being able to happen in order to watch the film and enjoy it. I mean, there's lots of things about lots of films that I look at. I mean, when we went to see 28 Days Later,
Yeah,
went to the picture to see 28 Days Later, I watched the film, thought it was a really good film, came out afterwards, thought absolutely brilliant. That was a really great film, loved it. It wasn't until I was on the way home from the pictures that I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, that one bloke lifted a London black cab that was full to the it had about what a dozen cases on the top of it. He
yeah,
lifted that up high enough for them to change the wheel on it on his own in the middle of a tunnel that was being swarmed with rats. And I thought, how the hell did he do that?
yeah. Yeah, I get the whole suspension of disbelief thing. I do that quite a lot. I'll quite happily forget things because, but it's just when it comes to stuff that, because when as soon as it mentions time, my brain just can't.
I know.
And I don't know why. I've
I,
tried so many times. It's just weird because I've watched a film and I suggested it to you called Time Trap,
yeah,
which is the one again another one on Netflix. A guy, and that's about finding this time bubble,
yeah.
and that I really enjoyed.
But I don't know. I don't know what it is. I just find it quite funny, which is why I so often say to you,
Yes, I
let's have a
know you
time
do.
travel film.
But the thing is that I know for a fact it's not to the point where I know this because when we watched it, when as soon as I say to Amy or someone, "Oh, we're doing science fiction one," she looked at me and goes, "Please don't say it's a time for everyone." And I'm like, "Why?" She because like, she genuinely said this the other day. I went, "Why?" And she went, "Because I can't deal with the ranting anymore."
Oh dear.
Sorry.
Oh well. Anyway, right. Enough of this inane babbly duke. Gobbledy bump. Gobbledy flip. Uh yes. Thank you to everybody out there in podcasty listening land for listening to our podcasty. And there is a danger at some point of me breaking out into something that I know what I'm talking about. I don't know when it'll happen.
Oh,
I'm sure it'll happen one day.
don't be silly.
Next week we're doing more science fiction because of the fact that we've done a couple of weeks of just pure horror. So I thought we'd do a couple of weeks of just science fiction.
Yeah.
So next week we've more science fiction. Science, science fiction.
I'm fixing.
Science fiction. Uh, that's stupid. So yes, until then, we will be going off and doing other things, which I'm probably sure you will be too. So, will be too, will be too.
Will be
Uh, until then, and then more and more of the same, with more of us and something else, doing a roundy round thing with bits going in and out and some uppy down stuff. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.
The Sci-Fi Film Podcast.